Have you ever wished you could create a portrait but felt lost on where to begin? Well, no worries, because today I've got some awesome tricks to show you how to draw a portrait with 6 different color tones on a limited color palette. Now, before we dive into the artistic side of this tutorial, let me clarify why we're sticking to only 9 colors from the Polychromos box of 12. As a professional colored pencil artist, I do have an extensive palette at my disposal. However, I want to show you that you don't need a truckload of colors to achieve great results. Sometimes limitations ignite your creativity beyond imagination. Also, this tutorial goes hand in hand with my YouTube tutorial on drawing skin tones with color pencils, a color guide. I'll put the link to that video in the description box below. So whether you're a newbie artist or a seasoned pro, get ready to unleash your creativity. Let's grab our pencils because it's time to start drawing. Starting off with our materials. I'm working with Polychromos from the 12 set of colors, but I'm only going to be using 9 of those colors. So I'm working with cadmium yellow 107, deep scarlet red 219, magenta 133, light ultramarine 140, phthalo blue 110, burnt ochre 187, walnut brown 177, black 199, and I'm going to be using a luminance white. I'm also working with cold gray number 1 at 230, cold gray number 3 at 232, and cold gray number 5 at 234. I'm also drawing on Fabriano Hot Press Artistico paper, but you can use any good drawing colored pencil paper, a handheld pencil sharpener from M&R, and I'm going to be working on a pre-drawn image, and you can get this pre-drawn image from a link in the description box below. Each section is going to represent a different color tone, and it's important to know that this palette is not exhaustive to all skin tones. I'm going to start on the drawing of the eye. Although the eye is not the focus of what this tutorial is about, I did want to show you the process that I go through. So I started the drawing with the cool gray, with a very light cool gray. So along with this, I'm listing 2 different numbers in the color circles. The large number is pressure and the smaller number is color number. I use pressure from 1 to 4. 1 is a whisper, 2 is writing pressure, 3 is a bit more pressure than writing, and 4 is quite hard. So just remember, don't press too hard and layer with a sense of transparency. So you can see that I'm jumping around a lot with all sorts of different kinds of colors. And as I do that, I'm building up the values. So I'm working with the magenta at this point and then coming in with some of the darkest gray, which is the 234, and also some of the walnut. So this is the darkest gray that I'm adding on the iris around the edge, and some yellow and ochre also, because I'm just adding in a variety of different colors to make it a little bit more interesting. So I am working with the 234 again, which is the dark gray. And again, just kind of building up, making sure that along the edges, which is recessed and further away, that the colors are a little bit darker and the pressure is a little bit darker. Now that I've finished the eye, I'm going to start adding yellow for the base of the skin, and I'm going to put that all over this area at a pressure of 1. After the base of the yellow, I'm going to add in the red all over the yellow. And it's at this layer that I start going from pressure 1 to pressure 2. So I'm going to jump between pressure 1 and pressure 2 so that I can do something I call blocking in form through shadows. Areas of the face that are darker will get more pressure with the color. And you'll see as I get more layers of colors that these areas keep getting darker, all staying within our first skin tone color range, of course. Adding ochre over the scarlet red and building up values around the eye with the walnut is an important step in developing shadows. In my video, Drawing Skin Tones with Colored Pencils, I demonstrated that the lightest skin tone had only 3 colors, but it's important to remember that skin tones are affected by shadows and form. To get this right, we need to introduce darker colors, and the idea, though, is pay attention to the pressure you're using when you have a light skin tone color, and don't go too dark in your shadows. I'm going to keep building up the shadows with the ochre and the walnut, and I'll work between these 2 back and forth. Pay attention to the areas that are getting darker. This means I'm using more pressure. At this point, I'm going to start to add eyelashes around the eye and the eyebrow. Going to bounce back into working with the ochre, building up the shadows around the eye and the head, and I'm going to start adding some light blue. Adding the blue actually helps to neutralize the yellow tones of the ochre. I'll add a layer of white. This helps to keep the colors on the light side and blends all the colors together as well. It's a great tool for doing that. At this point, I'm going to add in some more of the eyelashes, and that's it on this section. Starting in section 2, I'm going to add a layer of yellow as the base. I'll put the pressure up on the side so you'll know how hard to press as you layer. I'm also going to start adding in some of the scarlet red, and this is going to help to develop shadows. As I'm doing this, I'm going to blend in some light blue so it continues to help to neutralize the skin tone so it doesn't look so pink. I'm working with a blending pencil to help blend the colors I've layered into the tooth of the paper. Remember, keep your pressure light so you don't flatten the tooth, as this causes issues with layering. I'll switch over to ochre, and this is going to help me to layer and blend and to help build up all of the shadows. At this point, I'm starting to work with the walnut brown, and I'm going to layer in some ochre. And in this section, we're done. You can see that the skin tone is getting darker from one section to another. On the lips at this point, starting with the base of magenta and adding in some red and then ochre. Like the eyes, they are not the focus of this tutorial. I'll go through them quite fast. As I layer, I'll go with a heavier layer pressure on the edges and a lighter layer pressure towards the center. This is to develop the three-dimensional look of the lips and try to keep some of the areas a little bit on the white side to show reflection. And I'm going to use the ochre on the skin as the base layer, which is different from the two sections above where I used yellow as the base layer. I'll start with a bit of magenta on the outer side of the skin, and then I'll keep developing the lips with the magenta, adding in some ochre and red. Then I'll add in some black underneath the lips along the outside of the face and the upper lip. And I'm going to continue to go between the magenta and ochre. Remember, you want to develop the darker areas along the edges, and you want to, as your subject matter comes outwards or more towards the light, then you want that a lot lighter. And I'm going to work in with the walnut brown on top of that. I'm using a blending pencil at this stage, and that's going to help to darken the colors as it pushes the pigment of the pencil into the paper tooth. Remember, keep your pressure light so you don't crush the fiber of the paper, and that you can continue to add more layers if you need. Adding in walnut brown, and I just keep developing the skin tone, trying to go darker. Remember, you want to develop the areas that recess as darker areas and anything that comes forward as lighter as they're closer to the light. Starting on panel 4, I need to go darker, so I'm using a pressure of 2 and putting ochre all over this layer. I'm jumping over the base layers of the eye, but the process will be identical to the first eye. I added a layer of red, and over that I'm adding in a layer of black to help develop all of those recessed shadows. I'm adding in some more ochre and walnut, and I'm continuing to build up the layers, adding more shading, and the pressure is going to be a little bit harder at this point. I wanted to come in and show you a little bit of the development of the shading and shadows on that eye. And the important thing is that the top part of the eye, or the eyelid, casts a lot of shadow on the eye itself. And so you can see that I've created a fairly dark area. I've also put in some of the eyelashes and eyebrow. Remember, you want to do them quite randomly. Now, my pencil is quite thick in this situation, so it's not really super fine eyelashes, which they actually should be, but you still kind of get the idea. I'm using a blending pencil right now, and this is just helping to develop the darkness of the eye. And I'm finishing off this panel with a little bit more development of the eyelashes and eyebrow. On to panel 5, I'll start with a layer of walnut in pressure 1. Again, that development of the darker skin tone calls for a darker base layer. Typically, if I have a darker subject, I go with a darker base layer. You can see that I'm blocking in for recessed areas of the face, coming in with a heavier pressure to make them appear further away from us. I'm going to add ochre over the walnut and come in right away with the blending pencil at a pressure of about 2. This is going to help darken the subject's skin tone and push the pigment into the paper. I'll add yellow over this layer and blend that in with a layer of blue. With the red layer at pressure 2, I'm considering the shadows along the edges of the face and again all the recessed areas around the nose. So make sure that you develop these areas with more pressure and less pressure in areas where there's going to be more light. I'm adding black in right now. Again, this is to help to develop all of the shadows and the recessed areas. So you can see that I'm really working on the side of the nose and I'm working on the side of the face. I'm adding a layer of the red over the areas that I've developed with the shadows, and then I'm coming back again with black and white and blending that all together. So again, the development of this whole area is going to be just based on trying to go a lot darker. And now we're moving on to the final section. I'm going to work on the lips, so I'm starting off with a walnut. And I'm just doing the outline. And it's different from the one that I did on the other side. And this one is because I want to go a lot darker with the lips. So working with the walnut and then coming in with the magenta on top of that and then adding a layer of red and ochre on top of that. Once I've developed the lips area, I'm going to come in with the walnut brown and I'm going to start adding a layer of the walnut brown over the face. So not only will I put it on the skin area, but I'm going to also add it around the lips. And that's just to help to develop the shadows and the recessed areas a bit more. I'm adding in the magenta at a pressure of 3. So that's quite hard pressure that I'm working with. So you can see that again, I'm working on the recessed areas and the areas around the edges of the face. So I'm really developing. And you can see also that as I pull towards the center, that the pressure seems to be getting a lot lighter. So along the edges, the pressure was a lot heavier. And I would be layering a little bit more along the edges and in the recessed areas also. So just coming a little bit more. And once I've done that, then I'm going to add in some yellow. Once I've done the yellow, so you can see that I'm adding in some dark blue. And the dark blue is coming in at about a pressure of 2 at this point. And again, I'm just going along the edges and then coming in one more time with the walnut. And again, along the edges and the recessed area of the face. So this really helps to develop that three-dimensional aspect of the whole image that we're looking for, and also the different value tones. And I'm just pulling that up into section number 5 and developing that a little bit further. I worked with that walnut brown. I'm going to be adding in some of the red in here. And again, I'm just bouncing between section 5 and section 6 and then jumping back with a little bit more black. And that's just going to, again, we're just really striving for as much darkness as we can get. So you can still see the tooth of the paper coming through, which is what I typically like to keep when I'm working with a portrait, because I don't like it to look like it's a solid, like a plastic. I prefer to have a little bit of texture going on. So that's an important part of my own drawing process. So again, really developing those edges and kind of coming in at the very end right now. And that's it. So I want to thank everyone for joining me, and I really hope to see you in the next tutorial. Take care.